Parks Commission, May 2nd, 2024. And our first order of business is?
Well, certainly I'd like to welcome Sam DiMaggio, our new Park Commission member. He's filling the term vacated by Katie McDonald. She had to leave due to her change in residency. So welcome, Sam, and also a shout out to Sarah Schrader and Heidi Reynolds, who have graciously accepted to re-up for another term as on the Park Commission. So I wanted to thank them and welcome Sam, and thank you.
One thing.
I've been a resident, I hope this is on.
No, yep.
Yes, all right. I've been a resident in Fitchburg for, I think, 27 years. Been pretty active as a volunteer in Fitchburg. Volunteered for Dane County, got a ton of training. I went through all of their stewardship training. Went through some of their saw training, so use of chainsaw, and did seed collections, and went through training for using herbicides. And I've used some of that training now to do a lot of work here in the city. So if you've gone around and looked at Dolly Sprague, you'll notice there's a few less invasive trees in there along Dunn's Marsh. In Chicory Meadow, I've been working over there along the bike path with Scott's help and Anna and so on. So I've been pretty active, I guess, just doing a bunch of things. So somehow Sue talked me into coming to work here on this Park Commission thing here to see if I can add some value and contribute a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, you weren't doing quite enough, so we thought we better get you straight here. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining. So we will go to approval of minutes. We'll do them separately. We had 2 meetings with minutes to approve. And for the April 4th meeting, there is a citizen who would like to speak, Patrick Cheney, 5211 Kitty Crest.
For editing and correcting these minutes, I am only speaking of my parts in these minutes. In the number 2 minutes for the April 4th, the first paragraph, it's under public appearance, non-agenda items. The first paragraph for me doesn't belong in here, and this was in the February minutes, so that should be deleted. For the second paragraph for me, as far as I could figure, that it was supposed to be in the March 3 minutes under non-agenda items, public appearance, non-agenda items. In number 5G, I'm asking for my comment to specify that I asked for the removal of a CAP project to replace the McGaw volleyball posts. Other items were specified, so I would like mine specified in detail as well. There are other errors and omissions in the minutes, in these minutes, but I'm leaving it to the Park Commission members to read and correct them.
So if I could, Patrick, could you clarify now for me, in the approved minutes for March, so you're saying paragraph 2 and paragraph 3 should be omitted?
No,
Is this the April 4th minute?
Yeah, you're saying the April minutes included some things that pertain to March.
Yeah, the first one,
So they need to come out
the
of the
first
April
one
minutes.
was already in the February minutes, so just delete that first paragraph.
So the
for
first
me.
one.
The second paragraph for me, I believe, was supposed to be in the March minutes under public appearance, non-agenda items.
So that one can be deleted out of this one.
So, yeah.
Well, it's not in the March minutes. It belongs in the March minutes. You already approved it, but that's where it was supposed to go. Took me quite a while to figure all this out and reading through 4 months of minutes.
So I'll actually put the,
Yeah, that's what I would like. Just delete the first one, put the second one in the March public appearance, non-agenda item.
So the one that refers to Paul Sutphin is completely deleted?
Delete.
Okay.
About Paul Sutphin, yes. That was February. That's
Right.
in
And
February.
that it is in February. And the one that's about suggested names for the
Right.
park, that goes into March.
Because that was non-agenda item because it wasn't on the agenda yet. That was discussed in the April meeting where it was officially approved of the Fahey Fields, or Highfield Reserve, actually, park names, and, well, it's one or the other.
Well, aren't we-
And the Hartung park names. That was in the April. So there is a comment in the April minutes
I've got it here.
that was specific to that. So that part was right. Don't change that. And then what I said about 5G.
Okay, so the part that's going to go to March under the non-agenda items says, Patrick Cheney, with your address, and that you registered to speak, suggested the names for the
Yes,
parks.
that one.
And then it ends at all the suggestions for the park names. That goes into March under non-agenda.
Yes.
Because that's where the comments
Yes.
were offered. Okay. All right, now,
And 5G.
you got the 5G comment? Okay. I had some also little things. And I sent an email to Scott with them, but not in time for them to be corrected when they were posted. Under B for this meeting, that meeting, it said just the word closed with a D on it instead of close. Then where Patrick Cheney is mentioned under B, or C rather, it
what
said
number?
representing East Fitchburg Park neighborhood, it's East Fitchburg Neighborhood Association. That's what you are involved with, East Fitchburg Neighborhood
Yes.
Association?
Are you talking about a 5B or what?
Yeah, 5B. It just identified,
Yeah.
it would have made sense either way, but you go by East Fitchburg Neighborhood Association. So to add that, and we missed.
Yes, I actually missed that one, but I wanted to have
I
that in
caught
there.
you. I can't believe it. Got to run up a flag for that. Then under F, we don't have who seconded the motion.
That's one of them.
Yeah. And then that's in 5F. And then 6, I think it was Sarah. No, it wasn't Sarah because she wasn't there. Must have been Heidi.
Sue, also 5E. Take a look.
5E.
Oh, yeah, that's right, 5, yeah, E
Oh.
doesn't have a second either.
All right. We can find who those are.
Well, I actually,
You've got them. Okay. And then the only other thing, again, very minor, under communication, the word growth award was repeated twice. So doesn't change the content. Yeah. All right.
I'll add another minor
Okay.
edit under 5C, motion, just correct if there's an O missing.
Say that again?
Under 5C, the last word motion, it's missing an O.
Okay.
I only noticed that my name was close by. So.
Okay. Is that everything for the April 4th minutes? Anything else? Those in favor of the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries? Oh, I didn't,
I'll move to.
I'm sorry.
approve
I
the
back up.
minutes. Can I do it again?
Yes, start
I'll
over.
move to approve the minutes.
as amended, yeah.
Second.
Okay. Boy, I got myself off track there. Okay. So now we have another set of minutes from the 18th.
Who seconded that?
But those in favor? I didn't have.
Heidi seconded.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Those in favor?
Heidi seconded, and I'll move to.
Okay. I need to take a vote for what we just talked about. Those in favor, say aye.
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 None opposed. That motion carries. Now we will move to the 18th. Go ahead, someone with a motion to approve the minutes. We'll start there where we should have the first time around.
Move to approve.
Breaking.
Sorry, Sarah.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. And we have a citizen who would like to comment about those minutes. Patrick Cheney.
In 5A, I would like it to read that I opposed, as shown in the diagrams in the park, as inaccurate. Because right now it reads that I oppose the North Stonor Prairie Park, which is not correct.
Did you say 5A?
5A.
Does that make sense, Scott? Okay. Anything else from anyone else? Thank you, Patrick. Those in favor of the minutes of April 18th as amended, say aye.
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 Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. All right. Any public appearances for non-agenda items? I see none. We will review and approve our agenda. A motion to approve? A second?
I'll motion. I'll second.
Okay. Very good.
We'll get 2 names.
Okay. Any comments about the order of the agenda? We're okay to go with it? Okay. Those in favor of the agenda as written, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, 5A are action items. First is the resolution R46-24 approving the grant application and requirements for the 2024 Urban Forestry Inflation Reduction Act grant. We'll start with a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, Scott, what would you like to start?
I can, yes. Thank you. First off, certainly an appreciation and a thank you to Anna Healy for taking the time to put together this grant application. As mentioned, it is an Inflation Reduction Act application, and the total value of the application is $170,500 and I think $33? And $33, and a lot of this, or almost all of the grant application we'd receive dollars in order to perform a lot of the functions within the application. And the reason it's before you is that as part of the application, we need to have a Common Council resolution to be included in the application, so that's why it's before you tonight. And maybe if I could just do a real brief a summary of the grant. The title of the grant is a canopy renovation in City of Fitchburg disadvantaged communities, and this is another opportunity or another initiative to try and provide some additional services and support to our healthy neighborhood communities. And actually, this grant application, it's restricted to some census blocks within the city, which are really in our healthy neighborhoods. And it's actually a 3-year grant. Year 1 and 2, what the city will do is they'll work with appropriate stakeholders and hire consultants to complete a boundary survey of all the city parks and mark park boundaries. update the tree inventory data to include tree location, tree species, size, and conditions of all trees 6-inch in DBH and greater. And again, this initiative is really an additional step in trying to achieve our 30% canopy goal within the community. So we'll utilize year 1 and 2 to get this work completed, to get it inventory. And then actually too, the final step of it is to create a canopy management plan. And certainly the canopy management plan will be developed within the census blocks that the grants cover, but it's going to be something that we're going to try and incorporate it into the entire city. So certainly, you know, in order to achieve that 30% canopy goal, we're going to have to plant trees and do those types of things, and those are all expenses that are included in this grant application. So it's kind of a management tool grant along with a hands-on a planting of trees within the area that the grant covers. So I guess that's the long and short of it. The application is pretty descriptive and provides all the different steps and things that will be included in the program. And as I mentioned, the only commitment that the city will have will be the staff time to manage the projects.
Okay. I know others have some questions. I have two quick ones. The one of the areas included is the hillside, Southdale Park. And their area just south of the current community gardens is all fruit trees that have gotten out of control. So I don't know if that's something that where they can be, part of the scope of the work would be to get those back into shape. Maybe it's in here and I just didn't see it. And then the other question, same park, is there's that really difficult terrain on the north side of the park. And, you know, in general here, invasives are mentioned for removal, and I'm assuming that would include up on that hillside there. So just nice to know that if this grant would come through, that sort of helps with the expense of cleaning up an area that really needs a lot of work. So.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions too, Scott. I guess the first question I have is related to the actual scope of this application. It lists 3 blocks, which I don't know, I don't know exactly. Okay. It lists 3 census blocks, but it doesn't really highlight where those are. Now, I asked Anna where they were, and she listed some parks, but I don't believe that that's inclusive of all the areas that are quote-unquote identified in the screening tool by the DNR as disadvantaged.
Right.
So I guess my question is are those census blocks ones that have been identified as TIF blocks, or is the application meant to cover all areas which are identified by the screening tool as disadvantaged in the DNR tool that they highlight in the application?
Well, it's my understanding it would be through that tool that's identified by the DNR. And I know Deanna Schmidt has mentioned that, and she included some details in her analysis that the census blocks are a little bit different, if you would, in the DNR, and then the other. And then there's Anna too. She might be able to. I'm kind of fumbling a little bit, Anna. Did you hear that question? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Anna.
Anna, you're muted. There you go.
All right. So in regard to the census blocks, is it just the fact that they're a little bit different than what you would expect to see?
Well, the 3 areas that were identified were Belmar, the Belmar Park that you highlighted to me, which is in the Allied Drive neighborhood, right? And then the Southdale Park one.
Yep.
And then the last one was,
Yep.
the one over by St. James, or So those are the
Hugo
three areas.
Jamestown.
So those three parks are inside that disadvantaged area. However, the DNR screening tool is much larger than that area, right? So it includes areas like, in fact, it includes the area over by Dunn's Marsh, right? So that whole Dolly Sprague Conservancy thing is actually inside the disadvantaged area. So my question is, since those are identified as areas of disadvantaged that we can use the money, could we then use the money to work on those areas as well?
Yeah, if it's in the area, we can use it. The thing about the Dolly Conservancy is it's kind of cut in half by the, if you look at it by the map the DNR uses, it's cut in half. And I asked them, I'm like, hey, could we use this money in this whole area? And they said, well, you can only use it in the area that's covered by the grant. So if it's in the grant funded area, we can use it. We can, use this money for those parks. And if it's not, we can't.
Yeah,
So,
certainly that wasn't
so I
clear.
think
That wasn't clear in what I read in the document, in the DNR document. So if this application is limited to just those three areas, that wasn't clear in the DNR tool that was provided, because it showed a much wider area than what we're referencing in our application. I mean, it's probably worth
Well,
looking into,
what
I guess. We're going to have to ask some questions at somebody at the DNR to say, hey, where can we use this money?
So I did ask them that question, and basically they said, like, if it's in the map, in a shaded area in the map, you can use the money for that. So the parks that are in that, I list them all in this grant, and it's and like you say, it's it's Southdale, it's Hugo Jamestown, it's Belmar. Also, Pineway Park is included. The hub would be included. The Nine Strings Golf Course would be included. So I don't know.
So that's, yeah, I see that on page 11 in the packet, page 11 of 79,
It could,
Southdale. the
yeah.
hub. But I'm hearing you say now, though, that part of Dunn's Marsh, but just a certain part of it, and that's not listed on
Yeah,
this list.
No, it's not, because I didn't want to push my luck. And so on that prairie side, the part of by the bike hub that we burned, like that would be included. So if we did work there, we could do it. The other side, of Seminole Highway, that on the east side of Seminole Highway, is not included. And I specifically asked DNR that question, and they specifically said, like, hey, the census block splits this area in half. You can only use it for the money that's in you can only use it for the area that's in the actual census block according to their map.
So one point of context too, I want to kind of think back to the intent of the point of focusing on underserved or underprivileged kind of areas. Typically, environmental justice areas of the city tend to be under canopied, right? So we have hot areas or hotter areas because of the lack of canopy. So as we have increase of temperature and climate change happening, those communities who are already experiencing a lack of tree canopy really will need those areas to maintain a healthy community. So I want to make sure that we're maintaining that intent as we look at the grants, and hope that we can maintain that intent.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that
you're exactly.
I'm sorry. I just
Yeah,
wanted
you're
to make
exactly
sure that
right.
we understood what
No,
the
I just
scope
think-
of the project that we're looking at here, the application, right? Because there are areas over there which are, to your point, in a disadvantaged area right along the Cannonball Trail over there, that there's plenty of room that you could put some better trees or whatever, some canopy there, and get rid of some of the, Japanese knotweed that's sitting over there, right? So that my only point is this: we're going to do this application, we're trying to understand exactly what it's covering. I mean, it's very broad, but I want to make sure that it covers areas that make sense in these disadvantaged areas. So thanks for the clarity on that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, and Anna, the other thing, and I see Heidi also would like to comment. In the area, when the Sustainability Committee, I'm on that with Linda Brewer.
Oh, yep.
And Ted Redmond, who runs that, actually had pointed out that Fitchburg was a little bit unique in that in large sections of the what are considered underserved or disadvantaged areas, there's actually a very robust tree canopy. For example, if you picture yourself in parts of Southdale Park, or it's a mix, and then it will change because some of that is ash trees, but he was sort of complimenting the community in that there was a lot of good tree cover, but it can always be made better and replace it with more appropriate trees. And Heidi?
Yeah, no,
Heidi, go ahead.
Hi, so just a couple questions. So if I'm understanding this properly, the grant can only be used for those areas that are expressly written in the grant?
well, it's the grant can only be used for the areas that the federal Inflation Reduction Act considers underserved. So that's
Right,
the only.
but I mean, do they have to be expressly written in there, or is it just as long as they fall within a certain criteria? So let's just use Dunn's Marsh as an example. So if you don't put Dunn's Marsh in there, but it does meet the criteria of what the federal government considers underserved, you could still use part of the grant for Dunn's Marsh, even though it isn't expressly written in there. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And then, so I'm seeing here, so approximately 8% of the land is located within these disadvantaged areas. What percentage, so 100% of that grant would have to be used for this 8% of land?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, and then, and you probably don't know this off the top of your head, but I'd be curious to know what percentage of our budget is currently spent on that 8% of land now?
That's a good question. I don't know. It's interesting. That's an interesting question because a lot of our budget now is paid for by developers. So we're doing a lot of work in new development and new parks because we're spending park improvement fees and developer given tree receipts. So that's a good question. In terms of our operating budget, I don't know, but I can try and figure that out.
So what is the total amount of grant that we are seeking?
$170,000.
Okay, so $170,000 would be used for 8% of the land, and that would mostly be used for tree canopy, if I'm understanding this correctly?
Yep, over 3 years, yeah.
Over 3 years. Okay, so roughly 60,000 a year to plant trees in the 8% of that area. And then, and I don't even know if you can answer this, I guess the title of the grant confuses me. Inflation reduction. So what is the premise of that? Planting trees and reducing inflation. I guess I don't know how the two correlate. I don't, and maybe you don't. I mean, maybe it's just words they used. I'm just curious if
It's part of the federal law. This is part of that federal law.
It's the Biden Act. It's the Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. And so this is very broadly available for many other projects, whether it's climate or other things. So it's really the president's grant.
So it's not actually designed to reduce inflation, but rather to make a greater tree canopy in the areas that maybe are lacking at this point.
I guess so. I mean, in the Inflation Reduction Act, there's, I think, $1 billion for trees. 4 million of that is coming to Wisconsin through this grant program. So I guess I don't know exactly what the president was thinking for the correlation there, but it's in that law.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Oh, of course, no problem.
Yeah, and I have one other question. When I read that urban forestry document by the DNR, they referenced that you can use the money for doing land boundary surveys, and I noticed that was part of your Part A, Year 1.
Yeah, so I asked them that, and it's like, so they might not actually fund that part of it. Like, we just, like, for example, if you look at Southdale Park, it's really hard to tell what's ours and what's not ours if you look at like that aerial photo. So that's something that that's a service we actually might end up having to pay for. So yeah, I mean, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I
did
wanted to
express
alert you to
They said,
that,
well,
just, before you submit your application, that they may reject that based on what I read.
yeah, they might not fund that part of it, but I think we do need to figure out like where the boundaries are, particularly of that park, because
I think
it's
Scott
not
did.
super clear to anybody. I don't
I think
think.
Scott has a document
Yeah.
that lists the boundaries, at least I got a copy of it. I don't know if anybody else did, but it's very specific about the boundaries
No.
of Southdale Parks.
Well, the
Yeah.
bound,
I would see that, yeah.
But if you go out there and you're standing there, it's not real clear.
yeah, it
No,
needs
and
to
in
be
fact,
marked.
I was just there the other day, and there were some trees marked with pink ribbons. And so I was trying to decide, were those trees that were tagged to come down, or trees tagged to make sure that they stay, or was that a boundary definition? So yeah, I mean, I think that's a valid point, Anna. It would be nice to kind of know, like, where's the line, and would it be the apartment buildings? Would it be,
They're everywhere.
that own the land right up to the park? I guess that would be a question I would have as well.
Yeah, because if you're standing there, it's not, at least to me, it's not super clear. And if we're going to, like, for example, with, we just did all that work in Hillside Heights. Like, it wasn't really, at least I didn't know exactly where that park line was. And once we knew that, it was actually much bigger than we thought. And, we cleared out some invasives. We took down some dead ash trees. We, did a little bit of work in there, and it's much more usable to the public now because, we were able to get in there and do some work. And our other parks are, very similar.
Yeah, and it looks very nice, by the way. I mean, it looked very clean and still, naturey, but,
Right.
but clean and usable.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
One comment and one question. Comment is if we, in regards to disadvantaged communities and coming up with a plan for planting trees, is there an opportunity to engage those communities around environmental justice or the importance of trees, planting trees, and environmental education kind of component to this? The other question or comment I would make is we had a similar project in Seattle many, many years ago in South Seattle, which was an environmental justice community. But what was not considered was the long-term management of leaf management in the fall and the addition of those leaves to the streets and minor flooding in some areas. So just something to consider in regards to maybe we put some more thought around that long-term management and or environmental education within those communities around engagement.
Yeah, and that's part of this whole process is engaging with the community. It's actually a big part of it. And I'm kind of hopefully, to work with when planning has their new person, their new community development person. I'm really hoping to work with them. I didn't write that in specifically because I don't know when that person's coming on board or what. They're going to be pretty busy too. But that's a big part of it. Is once we do have some inventories really nailed down and we do have some plans we'd like to do in place. We need to run it by the neighborhood and see what they like. Everyone there is, we could, people have said like, oh, we should do a sugar bush or we should plant apple trees or whatever. But I think we need to get that, to your point, I think we need to get that information from the neighborhood, like what they'd like to see, what's going to be useful to them. What are some of their visions for how this would turn out, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think that's important because then it not only would allow them to be a little more invested in what's going on in their neighborhood, but also, sometimes when people feel ownership for something, they feel a little more responsibility to help take care of it, to make sure that it's, that it's their park. So I think that's a valid point.
Yeah.
Anna, I have another question. The funding can also is it also can it be directed towards more street trees? It's not just the parks, but
Yes.
we're focusing on the parks because
No.
of this commission, but it goes to street trees, et cetera.
Yeah, public rights of way, yeah. So, if it's an appropriate planting space, we can plant trees there. This would, what I'm saying is that we should plant more trees in our parks, our street terraces, and our public rights of way.
Yeah.
So like, Sam was referencing the Cannonball Trail. If that's an appropriate place to plant trees and it's within this grant, yeah, absolutely. We would plant trees there. So, it's wherever on public property is an appropriate place to plant trees. That's what we're focusing on with this money.
Yeah, and you also have I know the Healthy Neighborhood groups, the 3 areas, and there are committee meetings, but I've never really followed how the meetings go, but I'm just assuming they create contacts within each of those neighborhoods also. And is it, I guess the planning department is
Yeah.
the one that runs the agenda for them, so
Right.
the new person would be connected in
yeah.
that way too.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And the planning department's been very nice to, look at this for me and give me some feedback. And so they're very aware that this is coming through, that we're applying for this, and that if we do get it, we would be, hopefully working with them pretty carefully or pretty closely in rolling it out in these areas, since
Yeah.
they will have in theory, they will have a community development person that would be, it seems like a really good fit to help us with this.
And then swinging back to the topic of the survey, which I think is really important, but what Sam was pointing out or questioning, I think, is if you list something in the application that actually is not an allowed use, does it cause your application to be rejected?
I don't think so. I think they'll just say, okay, we're not going to pay for this piece. So, and I do have this question into Brian Wall at DNR. I emailed him on Monday, and I know he's really busy, so I may have to adjust that before we submit. This is due June 3rd. So that's the one piece I still have to really get answered from him. Like, hey, should I leave this in here? Should I take it out? What do you think? And kind of go from there. Because it's something in this project we would do, it's kind of one of those first steps that we have to do. So, I'm kind of waiting for guidance from him on how he thinks we should handle it.
Okay. Heidi,
I just have
Go
one
ahead.
more question. Does the grant have specific criteria as to what would be considered a canopy tree versus just a tree?
That's an awesome question, and it doesn't sound like there's a distinction. It sounds like they just want trees planted, which is sort of good for us because that means we could do, a whole variety of things. And so that's a really great question. It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like if it's non-invasive and it's a tree, even if it's like even a smaller kind of a shrub-like tree, they would fund it.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. So those in favor of the approval of the grant application and requirements for the 2024 Urban Forestry Inflation Reduction Act grant, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed?
Thank you,
Motion
Anna.
carries.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry I was a little late. I was at a school thing and it took me a while to get off and blah, blah, blah. So,
No, I want
Anyway.
to thank you too for putting so much thought into
Yeah.
this. I know writing these grants are not easy because, government speak is never easy. So it looks like you put a lot of thought into this. Thank you.
thank you, Heidi. It's gone through a lot of versions. It's
Don't
gone
they
through a lot
always?
of versions. So,
Yeah,
so I appreciate that.
One other thing I noticed
Yeah.
that my wife sent me, she works at the DNR, sent me some about environmental justice, looking for more, or going to dole out more money for disadvantaged communities. So I can send you the link. I don't know what it's about, but I'm like, more money, okay.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
Sure. No, that's fine. Yeah, and I appreciate you guys taking a look at this. I will get that survey question answered, and I really hope we do get funded. I've been talking to DNR quite a bit. I think we're in the ballpark, but I think they're going to have a lot of people going after this money. So we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. 6A is Southdale Park concept draft, and Scott, we're reviewing this as discussion only, correct?
Discussion action, potential action.
Okay, well, we can start to discuss. You can just get us started, Scott.
As part of our CIP for 2024, we have some dollars allocated for the Southdale Park improvements, and I'm trying to get to the CIP, and I believe it's $460,000 in the CIP. And one of the first steps that I thought we should do is to try and get a couple different concepts on potentially what the park could look like. In regards to process, we're here before you tonight. I did have EOR put together a concept with the idea of staying within our budget parameters, and it's really for a discussion type of communication here on what we could potentially do in Southdale Park. I will indicate that all of the amenities that are included in the concept plan would fall within our budget parameters. They did provide a couple different options, and another option was $100,000 over our budget, and how it differed from the option that you have before you is with an additional shelter that was located towards Deer Valley Road. So this is really just kind of a discussion, action, kind of get it before everybody and see what their thoughts are. I know another item that was included in another option was that the natural play area that you see in option 1 in the middle was actually located over near the existing community gardens in another option. So that might be a good switch, if you would, to try and create a space there for families if they're gardening. I did include in your packet, this is the original park plan, and it's 1995. So it's like 30 years old. So the amenities that we have within the park are generally in that 30-year-old age. I did, which Sam I think referred to a little bit before. These are kind of aerial photos with the boundaries, which I think really give you a little bit of what the park currently. And this might be the best one. Understanding.
So is it the yellow and the green line?
Yes, it is the yellow and the green. See, this is it's a couple different parcels, Heidi. So this is the northern portion of it.
That's on page 28.
And then you kind of.
And that's over by Badger Road? Am I thinking about that right, that the green portion is sort of over by Badger Road, or is it reverse?
That is on the north side, and that you can see that serpentine line going through the middle of it. That's the hillside path. So most of that is really, some of that is steep grade.
Yep.
Okay.
And see, this is where you can see the community gardens, if you would, in this area here. And then if you go down here, this is more of the park itself and how it's kind of configured currently with the amenities. And then there's actually a portion of it that goes out to the overpass. And then what I did include here was actual photos to kind of give you an idea of what it currently looks like. So this is the entrance, and then we did install the little free library and the bike repair station, and there's kind of the open play field. And actually in both of the concepts too, we want to make sure that we keep that open play area in the middle. and kind of create all the amenities around the open play area. In here, you kind of come through the path, and then if you see to the right, that's where the basketball court is. This is where the existing playground is. This is the current.
Sorry to interrupt. May I ask what would be an advantage to keeping that soccer area in the middle as opposed to maybe moving it closer to the sidewalk so you've got more of the open space sort of together? Or is there a disadvantage to doing it that way? I guess I was just curious the thinking behind that.
I guess I'm not really following you, Heidi. The open space in the middle you're referring to?
Well, if you go up a slide, okay, so the soccer, unless I misunderstood, you said the soccer nets, you want that as close to the middle as possible. Did I understand correctly?
Well, in the middle of the park, that's where the open play space is, Heidi. So yeah, you're going to want to keep the soccer goals or the soccer open play area in the middle.
So, okay, so I think you're both talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
That wide open area between all the paths and the street holds the soccer goals, which get shifted back and forth because they get muddy in the goalie areas. And Scott is just saying keep them in the middle, like in the middle of the entire park.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to put a playground structure in the middle or any kind of hard amenity in the middle, because then that would carve up that open play space.
Okay.
Heidi,
I
you
get
should
it,
probably
thank
go
you.
over there because it's a fairly small area. I mean, that
Yeah.
soccer field is not even regulation.
No.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
I've been there
it's-
several times. I wanted just clarification. I wasn't sure what he meant by in the middle, for the soccer, but I get it now. Thank you.
And then here's kind of a look from the other way. This is, I don't know what direction this is looking, it looks like looking west. And then this is looking the other way. And then this is one of the spray amenities that's currently, I believe it works, but it's kind of, it has it's just grass around there, which can become muddy and those and then the teeter-totter, the teeter-totter is right there. And then here actually is another small spray amenity. This used to be like a spider web, but that came under disrepair, so the web itself has been removed.
I have a question about that dark colored spray amenity.
Yep.
That has a water
Yep.
fountain on it.
Yep.
Does that work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Because when we start to talk about the new plans, that's close to where the kids play, or where the playground is shown. Even on one of the playgrounds is shown there still. So, okay, continue on.
So that's just kind of a little bit of background, what it currently looks like, and then we're looking for thoughts or comments on this draft plan. What we'll do is eventually, I'd like the Park Commission to author the concept that we'll take out to the public to gather their thoughts and feedback. But this is really kind of the working portion of putting together what you'd like the plan to look like. So I guess I'd throw it out to thoughts or discussions or orientation or and really now also included in this is a bathroom facility. So that would be a great addition to the park. And really the goal is eventually that all of our healthy neighborhoods would have a gathering place, if you would, similar to the hub at Nine Springs, and Hugo Jamestown is in another one of our healthy neighborhoods, and Southdale is actually one of the other healthy neighborhoods that we have. So we're really trying to create some additional gathering places in those healthy neighborhoods with facilities so that we can have additional activities there.
Okay, who would like to?
Yeah, I'd be interested
Begin.
in thoughts.
Go ahead, Sam.
Well, I went over there one time to look at it with Sue, and I mean, the primary areas, I guess, that I was a little concerned about is, there's quite a few things to talk about, but the garden area was one area that we looked at that was in pretty rough shape. It's gated, roughly sectioned off, I guess, for somebody to use, and from what I understand, there's a specific person who's responsible for that, but it doesn't look like anybody's really maintaining that. So I guess I'm curious as to what we think we're going to do with that. Are we going to clean it up? Are we going to create activities for kids there to do gardening or adults? Or are we just going to remove the garden altogether? That's one question I have relative to that. The other area that's west of there that has a fire pit, it's a pretty rough area. There are 2 grills over there, and there's a makeshift fire pit. So I'm not quite sure whether we are retaining that fire pit or changing it or what. And there's a swing there. So there's probably some liability issues there. And it's fairly ill-kept, and there's some trash getting dumped around in that area on the far side by the railroad right-of-way over there. So, you know, you're going to have to redo that area, I think, significantly based on what I saw. The pavilion itself looked okay, going to the pavilion. There was basically 8 to 10 bolted down picnic tables there that looked like they were in okay shape, but they probably need to be resurfaced or replaced. The fascia board on the pavilion looks like it's pretty rotted, so you might be able to save the metal frame and then replace the roof on that particular item. The playground equipment's pretty old, but I don't know, it looked like it was usable. It could be salvageable, repainted. So, I mean, it's not a system. There's a lot of individual pieces there, but it looked okay to me. Maybe you could rearrange it. But the main feature in there, and I think, that Heidi brought it up, is the soccer field. And the soccer field is really the main visual thing there. And I think one of the most important parts of that park would be to make sure that we put lines in there and make it look like a real soccer field, et cetera, because my suspicion is in that neighborhood that's going to get used significantly. Relative to the bathroom, I'm not really sure about that one and whether we even need it. It's supposed to be near the street. I guess I'd like to talk to somebody in the police area to make sure that there's not a safety issue there. I don't know if it's a high crime area, how that bathroom might be used or misused. I'd kind of like to understand that, I guess. Do we need to put a sharps container in there? I mean, there's a lot of different things. And if we're going to have a bathroom there, we probably ought to make sure the public knows where it is. And I had real concerns relative to where that 2 to 5 year old playground was. It was right near Deer Valley Road. There's got to be a better place to put that. I would put it in the back where you have it already and put the 5 to 12 one if you're going to split them up, move that closer to the front. The spray features, we didn't really know what to say. I think we could leave the spray features in the back right there, because if the young kids are going to be back there, that would make sense for them to use that there. You already talked about the nature area, and that didn't make sense where that was next to the soccer field, so you're going to move that. The other questions we had, I guess, when we were there was just the involvement of the apartments. That whole area is surrounded east, west, south by apartment complexes. And we talked to the owners over there about this park and what they're seeing or what they need, or, et cetera, et cetera. That seems like a logical thing to do in addition to talking about the police. And the other issue, I think, when Sue and I were walking, the area of concern was going up that hill that's going to take you to the walkover on the Beltline. It's a pretty rough area there. The asphalt's starting to deteriorate significantly. The lighting in there is pretty bad, so maybe we could get MG&E or whatever to come trim some of those trees so you can actually see what's going on. The best thing about it that I saw, and I appreciate that picture, was the locker. The library locker there and the bike racks, colorful. I thought those were great. That's the kind of thing I think you're going to need to do, is add more color to that park and make it more attractive. But that's fantastic. Whoever, was that Jorn who did that, or he did a great job. And that whole part, the beginning part of the park there, I think is great. I mean, we got to try to replicate as much of that as we can and put more color into that park. My other overall concern about it was it's just bizarre that Fitchburg grabbed this in the first place, because it's separated by 14 and the Beltline. It doesn't even feel like part of Fitchburg. So I'm just wondering how we're going to make the residents over there feel like they're part of our community. So that's been my overall concern about the whole project. You know, how are we, you know, they're basically segregated from Fitchburg proper. So, you know, how are we going to address that? I know that's a lot, I'm sorry, but those are my concerns.
Well, and maybe just a general, a couple thoughts, Sam. You know, really, this neighborhood, like you said, is kind of segregated from other neighborhoods. So, you know, I think one goal or one idea is to try and, you know, create the central gathering place for the community. And we as the city of Fitchburg, because it is ours, can begin to start to, you know, give it I don't want to say, you know, just give it a reboot, a fresh start, if you would. Because like I said, it's 1995 is when it was built and installed. And the city is really the council is really making an effort to try and provide some resources and into our new community, right? So, and I think, you know, if anything else, within Southdale, it might be a community in itself because it is so, you know, separated from the city, and that's going to be a challenge to try and incorporate them into the city. But I think a good start is to say, you know, Southdale, we consider you part of the city, and we're going to invest dollars in your park to give it a facelift and provide a location for everyone to gather and to have positive activities.
I mean, what exactly does that mean, I guess, relative to how are we going to do that? Is the $460,000, is it possible to, I don't know what services we could provide, but I was thinking, well, what if, you know, once a week we had a way for these kids to use the splash pad or let them get to the library. I know we put that library locker there. I opened it up. I think I found one Spanish book in there. But, you know, I mean, is there another way that we can make them feel like they're part of Fitchburg by offering a service to take them to some of our existing parks, even our recreational parks? Wouldn't that be I mean, I don't know what we can use that 460 for, but if we're going to make them feel like part of Fitchburg, we ought to reach out to them, is my thought.
Heidi, I see you have some comments?
Yeah, just to piggyback off what he said, I don't think there's really anything I disagreed with in what he said. I agree also. I'm not sure why the 2 to 5 year old playground is by the road and then the other one is so far away. You know, as a parent, if you've got kids that are 3-4 years apart, there's no way you're going to be able to be keeping an eye on both kids, you know, playing at the different. I think it makes more sense to have all the play areas together, and then instead of circulating the sort of water toys, you know, maybe having those as close together as possible, if that's feasible. What I was going to also say is I would advocate for, honestly, I think that budget is enormous, and I can't imagine how you would spend that much money on a park that small. But what I'm wondering is if we could invest a little more in that sort of community garden area and maybe invite, you know, Fitchburg, not florists, like landscapers or, you know, like Young's or the Bruce Company. I know they're not Fitchburg, but as an example, to come in and help residents. You know, how do you plant? What do you plant? What makes the most sense? Are you looking for something? Are you going to make food, or you just want pretty flowers? I think that community garden is a good opportunity for people to be more involved with each other, and then maybe whoever that one person is that's sort of responsible for it all, you know, maybe we won't feel as overwhelmed, and the space could be a lot more attractive than what it is. I agree that the equipment, you know, most of the equipment that I saw really was not bad. I mean, it looked like it was in really good shape. Probably needs a coat of paint or a little freshening up, whatever. But I would say at this point, rather than replacing any of that, it would behoove us to fix it up, clean it up, you know, maybe adding a couple new pieces. But I really am concerned about those little kids and their play area that close to the road. And I also am not sure about the restrooms either. I mean, this park is literally surrounded by apartment buildings, which the people that I've talked to when I've been at the park, that's where they come from. So, you know, it seems silly to spend money on having restrooms there when most of them would probably just run home to use the restroom anyway. I'm not sure about shipping people elsewhere, because I would like for us, and I don't know what the way is, but I would like for us to be able to find a way to bring that part of the old town of Madison into Fitchburg. I realize that logistically it's kind of far away and all of that, but I feel like there's got to be a lot of ways that we can do that, you know, whether it's ice cream socials or I don't know. I mean, I feel like social activities are going to be a better way within that park, I believe, than to ship people to other neighborhoods, because you know, who really wants to leave their neighborhood and go to another park? You know, you just want to go out and play, you want to enjoy. So anyway, I guess those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And Sarah, I see you'd like to speak.
Thanks, Sue. I just want to reiterate that I agree with the previous comments of the playground for 2 to 5-year-olds being moved up away from the road. And I guess I also was going to ask, so for the new restrooms and drinking fountain, I thought the current water fountain was kind of near the playground for 5 to 12 years. And so I don't know, one, in my mind, that is a nice big shelter. And I think that if it is rented out, that's where I guess I can see value in having restrooms at this park, of treating it as a gathering space for large individuals or family reunions or anything to, I guess, add value to these individuals that are in this area. But in my mind, it would make more sense to be by the pavilion, and I potentially this is foolish, but I guess I would assume that it would be potentially more cost effective to add the drinking fountain and the restrooms to where the water feature currently is by that playground of 5 to 12 years. And I don't know if that's foolish, but I just think that it would make sense to me to have that by the pavilion regardless, just for those larger event gatherings that are available. And I know historically we've partnered with food pantries and the petting zoo to have actual events in this park with Fitchburg, and I think that's awesome. And I think that those are the types of events that we should really encourage, to kind of, exactly like Heidi was saying, of bringing events to this neighborhood to encourage them to have the sense of community. And I do think that anything we can do to improve this park would help that. And I guess lastly, when I toured this park before, I do remember the community gardens being very busy. And so I like that area, and I like the idea of having that be a feature of this park. And I thought, and Sue, I apologize if I'm gonna, but I believe, Sue, you had done some proactive research regarding the grill, and that would have to be removed. Because I did have that in my notes of something that you had done some great research on in the past. And so just something as a reminder, if you had more to share about that. But otherwise, I really do appreciate that we're improving this park. Don't like the playground area for the 2 to 5-year-olds, and then would just question the water if it should be moved.
I will, excuse me, would love to also make comment. And Sarah, I love how you kind of thought about the design and where a bathroom should be. I think for a park, for the town of Madison, and this incorporation into Fitchburg, I think giving this park some TLC that it desperately needs to really activate it for the community, and comparing it to other parks within our system, making sure that we're bringing it up to par to the standards that we have for other parks. I think that's a great initiative and intent. I like that idea. I would also advocate, like Sarah said, that having a bathroom here, especially maybe towards the center, towards where the existing shelter is, to me that makes a lot of sense as well, because the basketball area and it aligns with the pavilion and the soccer area. That makes sense to me as well. It seems like a good spot for cost effectiveness and efficiency as well. But Sarah, I love your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything, Chris?
Yeah, most of my thoughts have been touched on already, so I won't echo them, other than saying that clustering everything near each other is probably makes the most sense from a use standpoint, both the playgrounds, the bathrooms, the pavilion, just the way these spaces are going to be used. I think it makes sense for them to all be together. And question I had was the community gardens, which Scott has said are used now. I like the idea of having that secondary gathering space over there with grills and a fire pit, and especially if it's improving uses that they already have, that they might be accustomed to and are well used. I think that's a great idea, and it's also a good spot because it's kind of tucked away and quiet. Question I have is, the parking near there looks like it's not our parking lot. It's not Fitchburg's lot. It's for the apartments or the private development there. Do you know if that parking is used for people using those gardens, if that's allowed, or do they just kind of do it, or how that works?
Well, actually, I think the gardeners live within the community there. So I don't think, I shouldn't say this, but I believe all the gardeners that are currently at the gardens reside within those residences that are nearby. So I don't know if people are driving to the gardens.
Okay.
From outside the neighborhood.
Sure. If they're not that's fine. That's great. I just assume people might be bringing tools to the garden, produce from the garden, stuff like that. So if they are driving, I'm just curious where they're
they
going.
would park, yeah.
But that doesn't mean that relocating it from where it is now is the better alternative. I was just curious. But separately from the actual design of on this physical space at all, I was going to ask if or how we've engaged the community so far. And then obviously we want to get their input on a plan, but I might suggest that before putting together a plan, or before taking this plan any further and going to them and saying, what do you think, that maybe we should reach out to them and say, what are the things you want? I don't think it's too bold of an assumption to say that, the demographics of that neighborhood probably aren't very well reflected in this commission. So we might not be thinking of some things that they would value that we just don't know. So, I think maybe a survey first, saying what are the things you want, ranking them in priorities and things like that. And maybe a bathroom isn't on that list. Maybe it is, but maybe there's something else. So getting that input, then taking that, those thoughts, then the commission's feedback that we've all given today, and then allowing, EOR or whoever to kind of take another swing at it, and then maybe take the plan to the community and say, this is what we're thinking, and give us your thought again. Because I think to Sam's point of how we're making them part of Fitchburg, that engagement is going to be a big part of it.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That's perfect. That engagement early is critical, I think.
Okay. And thank you, everybody, because a lot of things were mentioned that I hadn't considered, and all good ideas. Here's where some of my questions or comments are. Starting over on the left side, the west side, where we show the improved gathering space, grill, picnic tables, fire pit, and seating area. Is there any liability concern? I don't think we have a fire pit anywhere else in the city of Fitchburg park system, and that might be for a reason.
We do not, so that probably would need to come out, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There's one plan for the hub.
There's a fire pit planned for in the hub? perhaps?
Well, that was removed.
Was removed?
Oh, it was removed.
Okay. I had met a fellow who is one of the apartment managers, and I think he still lives there, and he's one who's tried to keep people interested in the gardens. And he lives near that area where they set up their fire pit and use the old grills. In fact, the old grill that's there is run down, and so they were wheeling their own grill in there. And he's a very nice fella. So it just may happen to be that there won't be a fire pit there. There's a tree with a long branch and a tire swing on it that to me also looks like a liability right now. Whether the rope is rotten or the branch is going to break, I would just not have it there. I like that I can't think of a way to continue to have a community garden if it's not there because space is so tight everywhere. And then the front part of that community garden, that's where there's a line of orchard of fruit trees between there and the parking lot stalls that you see, that they've just kind of gotten out of shape, which can happen. Then when you look at that,
I'm sorry, can we just have Scott bring
Scott,
the screen down?
Scott, the picture went away.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So we can see as Susan's talking.
I'm sorry,
Thank
I was
you.
looking at it's page 34, Scott. Is it frozen? It's frozen. It's right up above there.
You do a left click, looks like you have the toolbar open on the right side.
There you go. Okay. So to the right of the community garden, the path that goes up the hill and out towards the belt line and the frontage road, I think that's going to need repair. And I think we should find out what condition it's in and what the cost is of repair so we know what the total cost of renovating the park truly is. So I don't know, is there somebody on staff that can look at that, or do we have to ask someone to give us expert information?
Certainly, there's a high, steep hill there, so, does it need to be ADA accessible and those kinds of things?
Yeah, right. And others probably know this, but I think when Katie McDonald was on, we talked about it briefly here, and she explained as long as one access to the park is ADA accessible, which is the case at Deer Valley in the front of the park, that the other one doesn't have to meet a standard. But it's going to cost a lot when it needs to be repaired, and that's also how that many years old, 30 years or more. So we should find out what it's cost and have a priority list when we see what all the costs are. And then with the pavilion, they do show a drinking fountain almost in the area where it looks like there's a pad and there had been one there. So that's good if it's going to be replaced there. Where the current playground for 5 to 12, that's sort of where it starts and it orients currently all across the path that runs from west to east. And it looks like all of that's taken out and then just a new 5 to 12 playground area is put there. And then I'm with everybody else that the 2 to 5-year-olds should be playing back there away from the road with their siblings so one parent doesn't go crazy trying to figure out where everybody is. And then when you come down towards the front of the park and you've got the restrooms there, I appreciate very much the sentiment of having it back where the basketball and the pavilion and everything is. But as a plumber's daughter, I think part of the reason it's put towards the front of there is the expense of running water and sewer back there. And so just guessing that's, if we put it back there, then again, what would the cost be versus keeping it where it is? And that also may be why they had a spray feature in the front, plumbing. Although we have plumbing going to the back for the water fountains. I don't know if you can move the spray feature back or not, without requiring sewer? If it's a small spray feature, is that the type then that's allowed to just have the water seep into the ground? I don't know. So that, I don't want the 2 to 5 year olds playing there, but I'm just explaining that might be why the designer put it there, because it's the only place they could put a new spray feature because of the plumbing costs. So then the question would be, if you put the 2 to 5s with the 5 to 12s in the back, would you then still leave a cost-effective spray feature towards the front? And that's just a question. I don't know the answer. And do we know how much the restrooms would cost as it's shown, Scott?
The restrooms.
I mean, I'm just guessing, it's a lot. So if we started to see things all...
150.
Say that, 150?
150.
Okay, all right.
Well, in actually, I take that back. What they, this was about 90 or 95.
Okay.
Wow, that's a quarter of the budget almost.
Well, yeah, and I think that's to the point that I think we want to try to make a commitment to this neighborhood. We have a porta potty there now, so I think, a bathroom facility, and when you begin to start to, which we're trying to do is have these events that are being held at the, at the facility, and eventually have some programming there and those kinds of things. I think a bathroom, is really an amenity that brings value to the location. It's difficult to have. Well, I suppose you can do it. The shelters being rented and they're running over to a porta potty, and I think it just would be a nice improvement to the park.
And I don't disagree with that. I wonder if maybe that's something that would be a second or third year investment. I mean, I feel like, cleaning this up and making it a little more valuable. I mean, even in terms of like charging for the pavilion, I mean, I don't know if that is even something that we need to do this first year or two. I mean, I think it's just sort of getting people together, and I don't know, in my mind, I think the gardens and events maybe in that pavilion. I mean, I just know when I was there a couple of times, I mean, the park it seems like it's always busy. There's always families there, with little ones. And the other day when we were there, there were 3 young girls, I don't know, I'm bad with ages. I'm going to say maybe 8 to 12 years old. And they were just all sitting there having a little conversation, and it just seemed, the way the whole interaction was, it just seemed very community. And I think we could build on that, without all the bells and whistles, but investing more in what sort of things can we do here that would bring people to it. And then, make more amenities and make a more financial investment as time goes on. Again, that's just my opinion.
Maybe just we do the shelter is rented, frequently over the course of the summer, and certainly too the dollars that we receive in the CIP are through parkland dedication improvement fees. So those dollars are kind of earmarked for the improvements of the facilities. The programming dollars that you're thinking about, which are really important, are more of an operating kind of budget, general property tax budget. So, these amenities and these improvements are being paid through the parkland dedication and the park improvement fees.
I have another question. Is this considered an area park? It's got characteristics of, it's it's serving a huge area.
And I think we are trending towards an area park, certainly with the bathroom facility and the shelter, and to your point, the the amount of customers that are within a small short radius of the park. It really is functioning as an area park for the community.
So as an area park, it qualifies to have restrooms. Not everyone does, but it certainly qualifies. To me, I'd love to see all of it, but then we just need to prioritize what we can actually pay for, given this 460, because and the big question for me is the plumbing costs. I think it'd be nice if we were creating a new small spray feature that it's back towards the back with the other things where the kids are playing. So again, parents are they can be in one spot watching their kids go from item to item. But if you do that, how much does it cost to move that back? If you move the restrooms back to the pavilion, how much does it cost? If you find out how much does it cost to repair or work on that path going up the hillside, those are three big ones, and then all of a sudden you can start to really decide what's going to happen for a second or third.
When I'd actually see the path as maintenance, so I don't believe these funds would be available for the maintenance and the upkeep of the path.
All right.
And these are all, and I think to Chris's point, the idea of reaching out to the neighborhood and finding every things that they would be interested in, and I think it's we were just trying to get the conversation started, and I think we're doing a good job of doing that conversation, and I think now the next step is to gather what the feedback from the neighborhood would be interested in receiving.
Yeah. Sam made the point about the lighting. If you start out at the frontage road near the belt line,
we've contacted them, and they've pruned the trees for us.
No, does it work? Do the lights work? I've never been there during the time of day when the lights would be on.
I believe yeah.
Because some of them look really old, where if the fixture itself were updated, it might be more effective. So it might be worth a trip later in the day when the lights are on, just to get a feel for what it seems like walking through there. And I know that's a relatively minor thing, but I think people would appreciate good lighting if they're coming through there. Mm-hmm. Agreed. A lot of good stuff.
What sort of plans?
Go ahead, Heidi.
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask, what sort of plans or thoughts do people have about how to engage with the users of the park and the community to see, as we've all discussed, what do they want? What do they need? What are their priorities? And like Scott or Chris, I think it was Chris maybe said, maybe bathrooms are a priority, maybe they're not. Maybe the community garden is more of a priority, or maybe having the little splash area is more of a priority. I mean, I just wonder what everybody thinks. How can we sort of engage with the folks and determine what their priorities are before we go too far with this?
And that's going to be our goal, Heidi, is to, and I definitely wanted to try, and I thought the idea of taking something to the neighborhood that they could react to would be productive. But I'm hearing now it might be a case of what might you be interested in. It's we've got the budget restraints and in those kinds of things, and I don't want to. I want to be able to provide or allow the neighborhood to understand what they could potentially have. So I think that. And like I say, this concept meets our budget parameters. So all of the amenities that we have within the concept here, but certainly if you move the water features further away from the water main and all of those kinds of things, that adds costs. So, but I think generally the amenities that are included in the I'm not hearing that there's anything different that you would go into the park than the amenities that we currently have within there.
Yeah, and Scott, I had one other question. The nature play area that's shown in the center, you mentioned that one of the other versions of this moved it over to that far west side. And that's
Would be a good idea,
like a
yeah.
natural scape where they're climbing things, but it's rocks and gigantic tree logs and things like that, correct?
Correct,
what
but
that-
even
how it's defined.
even beyond that, it provides if there's families that are gardening, right? You might have mom or dad gardening, and then it provides a location for the kids to
Well, right.
to goof around. So
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I agree very much with wanting to find out what the neighbors want. But I also agree with what Scott's has done here is to start out with, here's an updated version of the park. Because there's only so many square feet in the park where, you can add and take away a few elements, but many of them are fixed. And I'm sure the alders have been involved with the healthy neighborhood meetings. I know Alder Allen stays involved, right, Scott? And this is his district. I'm not sure, how involved. There's a new alder there too as well. So, and you have a contact, Scott, for someone that's involved with the healthy neighborhoods, or someone who lives in that area that.
yeah, I've circulated it. Actually, the outreach librarian has provided some comments, and I've reached out to the contacts that I have within the community to get their general thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, because just having gone there the few times, I met 3 different people who lived in 3 different buildings, who had 3 different owners. And, I heard about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, one owner is great and keeps everybody informed. Another owner is in the middle, and one is very unresponsive. So I was reaching out to the owners. You'll get some input, which is better than none. And I don't know what, other than posting signs and having maybe even some events.
Well, I think we'll actually have an event in the park and invite everybody and
Have some boards.
have them come out and
Nice.
do some charrettes, that kind of thing. So
Okay.
What you could,
Could I suggest, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Could I suggest, and I don't know how everybody feels about this, but so that event that Scott was just talking about, what say we have that event as one of our park commission meetings, and we all meet at that park, meet the community, introduce ourselves, and give ourselves a chance to talk to folks, and maybe at that point we could have sort of a priority list or a sort of a open-ended questions, multiple choice, something like that. And that would involve a little engagement too, I would think.
we could have
Last thing I wanted to say is the basketball court looks wonderful. It looks really nice.
we could have an open house with the park commission at the park and talk about it.
And petting zoo.
Yeah,
Go
with the
ahead.
animals though, not the park commission.
Yeah, just. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I love that idea to have a park commission meeting, coincide with a community event like that, have ice cream or, popsicles or freezies or whatever, and just get to know the folks there. And I think we could plan on something for that, but I don't know what other people's opinions are. Sometimes I have big ideas, but then follow through isn't always the easiest.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
What was I going to say? So I think that a lot of what's being proposed in this plan are things that are already there. They're just improvements on it. And then there are some new things as well. So nothing is going to be sort of like crazy and out of left field. So I think what we could do to get the community's input is, let them rank or sort of say, really like, sort of like, don't like. Just give them these list of things, let them sort of react to them and tell us how much they care about them, and then give them an opportunity to, an other category. What else would you like to see? And do all that before showing them a plan for two reasons. One, if you show them a plan, it looks like you're already planning without getting their input, and they become disinterested because you've already sort of done the work, and they may seem like they're not actually listening to what they have to say. And then two, it sort of like poisons the well. Like this is like, oh no, I like that, I want that, or it kind of puts an idea in their mind before we want them to have an idea in their mind of what it would look like. So throughout these ideas, there can be, if this is an open house type thing, we have image boards with pictures of these different items, and then just give green stickers and red stickers. Put green stickers by the things you like, red by the ones you don't. And then leave a spot for people to write down things that they also want. And then we take all that information, we relook at this and figure out what to do.
I think to that point as well, and we've done this at the City of Seattle, where we're very explicit about this is the part we're informing you of, and then here's the decision point, where a vote or a decision, your input will have an impact. And just being very clear about that. I think where in municipal work we can get in trouble is when we overpromise and we don't deliver. And so we're trying to avoid that setup. And the setup is really being clear. This is the information that we're sharing with you on what we're going to do, and then here's where a decision can be made and a prioritization can be made. I think that's and that explicit language, making that very clear is helpful.
Yeah, I think those are both great ideas. Does anybody like the idea of having a park commission meeting
I love it.
coinciding with an event there?
I'd go.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
We could
Now,
have
an
an extra park commission meeting maybe.
Right. I mean, the obstacle is that rarely have we ever had a
Oh,
single
right.
issue Parks Commission meeting. It might have to be an additional, just,
An open house type
it's
thing.
just
like
an
we did
open
for
house where
Stony Prairie.
we come
Yeah.
and make sure we're there, as many of us can be. And it's noticed that there's a potential
Hand out
quorum.
ice cream.
And ice cream, yes. If you
I
offer
mean, who
ice
doesn't
cream.
like ice cream?
All right,
I'm there.
all right. Okay, yeah, thank you, everybody. All right, so we are going to talk about 6B, which is the McGaw Pickleball Court expansion. Do I have that right? Yep, 6B, update. And we have a citizen comment to begin this portion of Patrick Cheney, 5211 Kitty Crest.
This is noted as for discussion and comments and suggested changes and collecting feedback. So I have some comments and points for the commission to consider. The expected cost of these courts as listed is $200,000 for the 4 new courts. The lights are expected to cost $210,000. The lights cost more than the 4 courts, partly because the power source is a long ways away. Right now, at the end of April, beginning of May, it's light past 8 p.m. It gets dark by 8:30 right now. That's an hour and a half, 2 hours, less than 2 hours before 10 o'clock closing for the park. And in June, it's light till 9:30. That's a half an hour before 10 o'clock closing. So it's a gain of lighting the courts of a half an hour to at most 2 hours. The mayor at the time, Aaron Richardson, who initiated these, at that time specified that these would be 8 non-lighted pickleball courts. Now, considering the difference in the cost there of the lights and the 4 new courts, just hypothetically, which would the park commission and the pickleball players actually prefer, lights or 4 more courts? In the electrical diagram, this says that this has keyed switches for these lights on the diagrams. So who gets the keys? All the Kappa people? And is this going to be free to use the lights as done at McKee tennis courts? Anybody can go up and push a regular push button to turn on the lights? Or is this with keyed switches as done for the McGaw softball fields, and then there's a fee to turn on the lights? And with 12 pickleball courts, who is ever going to rent these courts? And if you don't rent the courts, when would you pay the fee to use the lights? So now on some observed flaws on the original 8 courts, I would suggest that the new courts should have 3 feet of paved surface outside of the fence all around on the north, east, and maybe even on the south sides of these courts. And the cement that secures each post into the ground in the asphalt should be specified as being above the court surface grade to shed water away from the post, because right now some of them, the cement around the post is lower than the court surface, which promotes holding water right by the post, and that's going to promote rust.
Thank you. Patrick? Okay. Scott, what would you like to tell us?
Well, and we're continuing to work on the project, and certainly Patrick mentioned the budget, and our goal is to make sure that we remain under the budget. So I guess I just wanted to share with you what the draft pickleball expansion plan is looking like. I know one of the things that we're working on is this shade structure. It came in at like $50,000. So the idea that we're looking to do to try and reduce that is to have more of like the fabric shade structures that we have at the splash pad. And Patrick, another thing that we're working on is, that's a long run coming from the east to the west. So we're working with MG&E to hopefully have a different service potentially on the west side of the park, which then in the future could provide power for the shelter or bathroom if it's ever decided to have that on the west side. So I guess I'm really just showing you an update of where we're at, and we're continuing to work to remain under budget, and it's going to be hard. And one of the things that we're potentially considering is to do the infrastructure for the lights, if you would, and then have it as a future project to actually have the light poles and those things installed. We're looking at some things that we could potentially do in-house, which is this. If you're familiar with the site, there's a ditch that runs north and south. So the idea of running stormwater a facility to an inlet, and then we'd be able to fill that area, which would provide some additional areas for landscape and those kinds of things. I've been working with the dog park advocates regarding gates and openings and those kinds of things. So it's really meant to, certainly it's a discussion action, but as an update to you that we're continuing to work on the project.
Okay, Heidi?
I hate to always be a naysayer, but do we really need more pickleball courts? I mean, are the 8 that are already there, are they, I mean, are there waiting lines for them? I guess I'm just curious. I know it's a popular sport right now, but I have to go back to the economy, and as somebody who was a single mom and can barely, doing my best to work, to live paycheck to paycheck. And then when I see the community that I live in, that I pay taxes to, adding more pickleball courts, I'm just sort of wondering, what the priorities are here, and do we really need 4 more right now? I'm just being honest. I guess that's just my question.
Well, and maybe a little bit, I can answer the taxpayer dollars aren't going to go to the construction of the courts, Heidi. If that helps, that's going to be paid for through the parkland dedication fees that are collected from the developments that are in the area. And to the point of whether they're being used, they are being used, and we're really trying to create a space where we could, in theory, have tournaments. I know the chamber is very interested in wanting to have regional type of tournaments and things at the courts, and they are, pickleball is very popular right now. So I guess that's kind of the rationale behind the expansion and the lights, if you would. They certainly, in the spring and the fall, it does get dark earlier. So to try and extend the use of the courts, that's the thought.
Has anybody asked the pickleball tournament or the chamber, are they willing to pony up? Or, and I understand that this is dedication fees, but I mean, you're still going to need taxpayer funds to mow the lawn around it and to, pay the electricity and, all of the things, the maintenance and upkeep, and 20 years from now, replacing those courts. So, I mean, I feel like there are so many stakeholders in this, and I'm wondering why we're the only ones that are, that are opening the wallet. I guess that's my question.
Well, and I might provide that the pickleball group is doing a lot of work for the city in regards to programming and lessons and those kinds of activities out there. And it does bring residents from outside the community here for sure, but they certainly stop hopefully at the local gas station or establishment and spend money here. So it truly is an investment in the community and in trying to make our community appealing to residents and visitors, and hopefully the visitors become residents in the future.
Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I have one, Scott. I guess just to kind of piggyback off what Heidi was saying is, how are we gonna, I know we don't do escrow accounting in a government, but how are we gonna maintain these courts, I guess, going forward? And how are we gonna put money aside for the eventuality that these courts are gonna need to be replaced?
And I will tell you, Sam, that we actually started when we updated redoing the tennis courts at McKee Farms Park. What the city did do is because they're expected to last about 40 years, so then they're putting an annual allocation every year so that when it gets to be the 40 years, we're going to have the dollars available to replace the tennis courts, and we're doing the same thing for the pickleball. So that's a good method, and that's how we're really trying to create the dollars so that when it is time to replace them, that we have the dollars available.
So that will be at the end of the term of the court or whatever, or is it going to be like a yearly maintenance? I mean, I'm assuming there's some maintenance associated with.
Not so much maintenance, Sam. Certainly, after a couple years, there may be some cracks and those kinds of things. So
will that money then go to make those repairs, or is it
meant
for later?
That money will be earmarked for the replacement thereof, but there certainly is going to have to be dollars allocated annually to do the maintenance on the courts.
Okay.
Anyone, anything else? Okay, so we can move on, right? Okay, communication items. The 7A is the Teen Center update. Scott?
Yep, and Deanna Schmidt, I believe she provided an update. The Park Commission did ask for an update on the Teen Center. last month, and then Deanna Schmidt did provide a memo, which hopefully answered the questions that the Park Commission was looking for. But certainly, if there's additional questions and comments, let us know, and I'll get them to Deanna, and she'll work on a response to the questions.
I have hang on just a
I'm
second,
sorry,
Heidi.
I had sent an email to you, and so will she be coming to a meeting to, maybe sort of address all of these questions?
Well, I did. I sent an email to you this afternoon, Heidi, actually, that Deanna was going to work on the responses to the questions that you did have, and then we could certainly ask her to come back at some point if you'd like. I guess she's just working to get the answers to the questions that you proposed.
Thank you.
Okay. And I didn't really want to engage with the email discussion because I'm always a little queasy about if I write and everybody sees it, am I violating the open meetings laws for us to be discussing anything like that just via email. And it's been mentioned before, and I would just like the history because I know there's a reason, but this project is defined as a teen center, and it just seems to me that that community, which is also isolated from Fitchburg as a whole, would benefit more to have a community center where it's not just teens that are served, but families with children of all ages and single people, et cetera. There's a lot of help that might be directed there. And just by defining this as a teen center, when Deanna does explain the background, explaining what the council's wisdom was in just narrowing it to a teen center at the time. So file that in as a question. Anybody else have a question? Okay, so then we have 7B. We're honoring Sue Easterday, the DNR 2024, one of several invasive species action awards. So Scott, you can explain how that happened.
Well, that Anna submitted you as a potential recipient of this award, and you were honored to receive it. So I wanted to make sure that
yes, thank you
received that recognition. So
thank you very much.
Invasive Species Action Award.
That's very cool, and I'm going to go to the ceremony, and Anna and I may go together. It's at I don't even remember the date. It's on my calendar, and it's at the where the International Crane Foundation is up there. So that'll be really very nice. So thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So now Hillside Heights is item C.
Yes, the Park Commission did ask for the Hillside Heights Park Management Plan, and we actually do have a specific management plan for public properties. And Anna did help me. We didn't have one specifically for Hillside Heights, but she was able to craft a management plan for Hillside Heights, kind of taking the current park and what it is, and what our goals would be for the desired future conditions of the park, if you would. So that was in response to the question I did receive last month to what's going to be the details of the management of the park.
Okay. And I appreciate this. And Scott, you and I, we always review the agenda before the meeting, so he's here. He's so lucky he gets to hear some of these things for a second time. But one of the things about this document is that it seems to be its goals mostly, and they're great goals. And I know the neighbors had expressed in the past interest in specific follow-up for areas that have been cleared. And my understanding, as Scott explains it, is having gone into some of those rough areas with the forestry mower is going to remove the potential for a lot of the invasives to grow back, but The other half of that is that you have seeds from the invasives. They are so, Scott and I talked about in other parks, a small contract is you find somebody to go in there and just do follow-up and spraying, et cetera, right? And I think that was one of the things the neighbors will be comfortable knowing.
Well, and to your point, if we go in there and use the forestry mower and clean an area, it's best to go back and treat it so it doesn't get back to where it was before.
And we talked about the area underneath the spruce trees that's gonna, those got trimmed up and there'll be more stuff coming in there. Anybody else have a comment? Question? Okay, well, thank you for providing that, Scott. What's next here? The Stoner Prairie park plans.
Yep, that plan is out to bid, and the bids are due on Wednesday, May 15th at 2 o'clock. So the hope is that we come back to the June Park Commission with a referral from the council for approval of the contractor who's going to implement the plan that we have identified here.
Any questions there?
Quick question.
Go ahead.
Is this bid going to, are they bidding specifically the playground equipment on sheet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So regretfully I missed the special meeting to talk about this, so maybe that was shown there, but I had asked to see more images of what that equipment is, because these plan views don't really tell us much. Has anybody seen that?
I actually sent, I thought I sent a follow-up email that had the actual, after you requested that, Chris, I sent an email, but I could certainly send it again, what the playground is going to look like.
Okay, if you maybe did and I missed it, but if you wouldn't mind sending it again,
Nope,
and I'll also
not at
check my junk mail or if it's attached to some other email that maybe I didn't, or
Okay,
it's an
okay.
attachment and I didn't see the attachment, I'll check that as well.
I will do that.
And Northfish Hatchery. Any other questions about Stoner Prairie? I'm sorry. Okay. So Scott, now the Northfish Hatchery Hub update.
Yep, this is also out to bid with a due date Friday, May 17th at 11. So hopefully that'll come back to the Park Commission in June also.
Okay.
So that was a big thing to get out to bid.
Okay, so now we have staff reports and updates, and I have a recreation question because I forgot to ask it when we were talking about Southdale. Is there, and it's not beyond just recreation, but various city departments, you mentioned there's library outreach. Did I hear that right, that they did do or are planning to do trips to the library from the park, whatever, once a week or something
No,
in the fair weather?
They outreach, the library outreaches to Southdale and does programming out there.
They go there. And
Yeah.
so right now when they do programming, it's just in the fair weather in the shelter?
I would think they utilize the shelter or the open play space
Yeah,
or
yeah. I didn't know if
whatever.
any of the apartment buildings had a meeting room or anything like that in the area. Not that we're aware of, at least.
Yeah, no.
Any of the apartment owners. Okay. And then, does the recreation department do a once a week trip to the splash pad, the big splash pad? Because that's something, some other communities do, and it might become pretty popular because it just seems like there's so many kids there.
Right,
And it's nice, we're talking about potentially a small water feature there, but to get on a bus and get a chance to go once a week to, and maybe not just that park, but tour some of the bigger parks. But I know the splash pad would probably be a big hit as a suggestion for a future rec program.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else have comments or questions on any of the staff reports, updates? No? Future agenda items? Oh. What, I'm sorry, what did? Oh, I am sorry, thank you. I have Patrick Cheney who would like to comment on 8C. I'm sorry, Patrick.
8C. Parks report.
Yes, come on up. Oh, you want me to read it? Okay. This is from Patrick Cheney, 5211 Kitty Crest. When will Sunnyside Dog Park well and drinking fountain be turned on? It is still off through today. Do we know that answer, Scott?
I don't know that answer, no.
Okay. To be determined. Unknown.
When all the other drinking fountains in the park system get turned on, yeah.
Yeah, they make the rounds?
They make the rounds, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Future agenda items. Anything? We've got a long list.
What about Terra Vesa Park?
You want to talk about Terra Vesa?
I went out there with Scott the other day, and looked it over. I mean, the concept is interesting. I mean, there was, we met a guy who's a birder out there, and he was talking about grasshopper sparrows, and, I thought to myself, well, maybe this is more of a bird park than it's an agricultural area, so. I don't know.
You mean the actual agricultural
Yeah, the
portion of
agricultural
it?
portion of the park.
Yeah.
So it was interesting, we had this conversation with this guy out there, but, I not a birder, but I thought it was an interesting comment.
Yeah.
He was concerned that we wouldn't mess up the bird habitat that currently resides out there. And I assured him that, that's one of the goals is try to create habitat for everybody.
Yeah.
He was concerned about it.
I would be too because I'm a birder. But, so if we can talk about it being on the agenda, or I can find some of the meetings where it was discussed recently.
Yeah, I mean,
There
I'm
was
the new guy, so I'm.
Yeah,
sorry.
well, no, that's fine. There's links to the meetings that were held, the public meetings about the park, and that might help answer some of the bigger questions that you might have. So our next meetings are June 6th, and it says July 4th, and Patrick has a question here. It says July 4th, really? So what do we do?
Do you want to go the week before or the week after, or skip it, or?
Well, we could probably decide in June, correct?
Sure.
And
sure.
then you'd know how much might be building
Oh,
that
there
we
you go.
must
There you go.
address? Should we we'll
So
figure it out
we'll
then?
set the July meeting at the June 6th.
Sounds good to me. Okay. Any other comments before we have a motion to adjourn? Okay, motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Christopher?
We're going to give Sam the second.
Sam.
He's on the
you're
board.
in
I heard him say it very quietly. Okay.
He's in the record.
All right. Those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned at 7:58. Thank you, everybody.